What's the solution here? Because in Donald Trump's answer to the debt question, he did eventually go on to immigration. When President Biden was talking about the national debt question, that was the question where he froze up and ended up saying, "We beat Medicare." In your op ed for the Washington Post, this is what you said for a possible solution. We don't need another commission. We need the president and Congress to do their patriotic duty and lead. What does that leadership look like?
You're going to have to come first. You have to come to the American people and tell them the truth. You can't come and dodge this. You got to say, here are the facts. And it's not complicated. It's not like a cure for cancer. It's a relatively straightforward problem. We're spending X, and we from taxes, we're generating, I don't know, X minus 5% or 6% or something like that. We're going to borrow another $1 trillion this year, I believe, to cover the difference. And the only way we can solve that problem is be aware that we got to keep the economy growing. All of us want the economy to grow. So you got to look for a way to generate additional revenue. Take Social Security, for example. It's a relatively easy problem to solve. You are going to have to raise some additional revenue. I personally would like to see lower income beneficiaries get more rather than less. 40% of them right now, that's all they've got for income is Social Security. You're also going to have to make adjustments in the benefits. And for you that are covering this thing, the first thing that will happen for every single time there's proposals to fix Social Security, the people will be turning out their heads saying, Bob Kerrey wants to move the retirement age back. That's not true. There's no such thing as a retirement age any longer. We eliminated the need to quit work in order to get Social Security benefits. You don't have to retire to get Social Security. There's an early, there's a normal, and there's a late benefit. That is true, and those are going to have to be moved a bit. So you're spending and you got revenue and you got to balance the two out. And it's supposed to be covered for all all generations. 75 years it's supposed to be covered, and it's not even coming close. It's just not fair, and it's not fair. And so you got to come and say we can solve this problem. We're going to have to reduce the benefits a bit. We're going to have to generate some additional revenue. We can keep our economy growing. We can make Social Security even more fair than it currently is. But we got to be brave. We got to think of those men who landed at Normandy, 80 years ago, and say we've got to act the same way, because it is going to take courage. It's not going to be easy, and the American people have to recognize and appreciate when you've got people when they do finally step forward and say we're brave enough to get this done.
You're very clear-eyed here, saying there is a solution and it's very easy. We just need to come to the table and talk. Do you think people right now, politicians, aren't coming to the table to talk about this because we're living in such a deeply divisive, partisan time right now?
Well, I think it matters. Although it's not the first time we've had difficulty solving problems, but people have opposition to all kinds of things, and a solution to Social Security, as I said, Republicans say, "Oh my God, I don't want a tax increase." You can't solve it without a tax increase. Well, I don't want a benefit cut. The Democrats will say, "But you can't solve it unless you do." It's not going to ruin the country. Quite the opposite. We're going to be borrowing substantially less money, and more importantly, we're going to be able to say to our children, to our grandchildren, "We don't just talk about you. We've covered the cost. We're doing this for you. We're not doing this for us." We recognize that we might win by a smaller amount in the next election. We might even lose the next election. But again, I remind those 535 members of Congress, I'm sure all of them watched the D-Day celebrations and the memories brought forth by these old men who paid the price. And we praise them. We recognize the courage it took. If you want to be remembered for having done something that required courage, you need to do something that requires courage, or you won't be remembered for it.
Who do you think is better equipped when it comes to handling the national debt, decreasing the national debt, President Biden or former President Trump?
Oh, I think Biden. I mean, Biden's having difficulty answering the question, but he didn't go to immigration as a solution. No, I think Biden is much more likely in the end, when you get to a point where you got to decide what you're going to be for, to make those reasonable adjustments so those 40% of Americans who only have Social Security get a little bit more than they currently do. So yes, I trust Joe Biden more than I trust Donald Trump at the moment.
That does